For 2,000 years, one spice was worth more than gold. Emperors burned entire fortunes of it in a single night. Explorers crossed oceans to find its source. And to protect that source, traders told the world a lie so wild it lasted for 1,000 years. This is the secret history of cinnamon, and the truth its sellers killed to keep hidden. Cinnamon does not come from a fruit or a seed. It comes from bark. Specifically, from the inner bark of trees in the genus Cinnamaldehyde, which grow tall in the tropical forests of South and Southeast Asia. Strip away the outer bark, peel the delicate inner layer, let it dry, and it curls into the familiar brown quill we know today. The finest of all is Ceylon cinnamon, the true cinnamon, native to a single island, Sri Lanka. For thousands of years, this one small place was the secret heart of the entire cinnamon trade. Nowhere else on Earth produced it quite like this. And that scarcity would shape history. Humans have prized cinnamon for at least 4,000 years. It appears in some of the oldest records of civilization. And from the very beginning, it was never treated as a mere flavor. It was something closer to treasure, tied to wealth, power, death, and the divine. In ancient Egypt, cinnamon was sacred. It was among the precious aromatic substances used in the rituals of embalming, helping to prepare and preserve bodies for the journey into the afterlife. Its scent was thought fit for the passage between this world and the next. But it was in Rome that cinnamon's value became almost unbelievable. Roman writers recorded prices so high that a single pound of cinnamon could cost many times a laborer's wages. It was weighed against silver and gold. To own it, to burn it, was to display staggering wealth. And burn it they did. The most famous story concerns the Emperor Nero. When his wife Poppaea died, Nero is said to have burned an entire year's supply of Rome's cinnamon on her funeral pyre, in a single overwhelming act of grief and extravagance. A fortune turned to smoke in one night, to show the world his loss. The Roman general Sulla was honored with statues carved from cinnamon at his funeral. For Rome, this spice was not for the dinner plate. It was for the gods, for the dead, for the powerful. Its scent was the smell of luxury itself, rising into the air at the funerals of the great. But here is the mystery that haunted the ancient world for over 1,000 years. Where did cinnamon actually come from? The Greeks and Romans craved it, paid fortunes for it, and yet had almost no idea where it truly grew. And the traders who sold it wanted to keep it exactly that way. Because the real secret was simple. Whoever controlled the source controlled the fortune. If Rome ever learned that cinnamon came from Sri Lanka, they could sail there and buy it directly, and the middlemen would lose everything. So the traders did something extraordinary. They invented a story. They told the ancient world that cinnamon did not grow in any ordinary place. It came, they said, from a distant, forbidding land, where giant birds gathered the cinnamon sticks and built their nests from them, high on cliffs no human could ever climb. To get the cinnamon, the story went, harvesters had to leave out huge pieces of meat for these enormous birds. The birds would carry the heavy meat back to their nests. The nests would break under the weight and crash to the ground, and only then could people gather the precious fallen sticks. It was a thrilling, terrifying tale, and it was completely false. The great Greek historian Herodotus recorded this legend of the cinnamon birds. Other tales spoke of deep valleys guarded by winged serpents, or nets stretched over the edge of the world. These were not innocent myths. They were deliberate marketing, spun to justify sky-high prices and to hide the humble truth. That cinnamon was simply bark, peeled from a tree on an island. The Roman writer Pliny the Elder saw straight through it. He mocked the bird legend directly, complaining that traders invented such fables purely to drive up the price. But even Pliny could not stop the deception. The lie was too profitable. For centuries, the fantasy protected the monopoly. The true source stayed hidden through the entire ancient world and deep into the Middle Ages. Arab traders acted as the gatekeepers, funneling cinnamon westward through a chain of middlemen, each taking a cut, each keeping the secret. By the time it reached a European table, its origin was a complete mystery, and its price was extraordinary. In medieval Europe, cinnamon remained a symbol of status and power. To serve it at a feast was to announce your wealth. A merchant carrying a small bag of it carried a fortune. And the hunger for spices like this one would soon push Europe to do something that changed the world. Because eventually, the fantasy could not hold. The value of cinnamon was one of the forces that launched the age of exploration. European powers no longer wanted to pay the endless markups of the middlemen. They wanted the source itself. And so they set sail, searching for the true home of the spices. When the Portuguese finally reached Sri Lanka in the 16th century, the thousand-year secret collapsed. There it was, growing on the island, no giant birds, no winged serpents, just trees and their fragrant bark. What followed was brutal. Control of the cinnamon groves passed from the Portuguese to the Dutch to the British, each empire fighting to own the source of the spice. The lie was finally dead, but the truth was almost stranger than the fiction. That all of this, the fortunes, the funerals, the wars, the deception, had been over the peeled inner bark of a tree, curled up and dried in the sun. As global trade grew and cinnamon spread to new plantations, its price finally fell. The spice that once cost a fortune became something almost anyone could buy, a jar in the kitchen, a dusting on a pastry. But as it became common, an old question quietly resurfaced, one the ancients had always believed in. Because from the very beginning, cinnamon was never only a flavor or a luxury. Ancient physicians prescribed it as medicine, for digestion, for warmth, for healing. Traditional healers across Asia trusted it for thousands of years. So here is the modern question. Beneath all the myth and money, does cinnamon actually do anything to the body? Were the old healers right? To answer that, scientists turn to the leaf and bark's chemistry. The dominant molecule in cinnamon is called cinnamaldehyde. It makes up the great majority of the spice's aromatic oil, and it is responsible for that warm, sweet, unmistakable scent. And it turns out to be far more than a pleasant smell. The most studied claim is about blood sugar. And here the evidence is genuinely interesting. In multiple clinical trials, people with type 2 diabetes who took cinnamon saw measurable reductions in their fasting blood sugar. In some studies, doses of a few grams a day lowered fasting glucose by meaningful amounts. A meta-analysis, which combines many trials together, concluded that cinnamon supplementation significantly lowered fasting blood sugar and improved cholesterol levels in people with type 2 diabetes. The ancient reputation of cinnamon as a remedy for the body was, at least in part, landing on real ground. Scientists even traced how it might work. Compounds in cinnamon appear to mimic some of the effects of insulin, and to slow the enzymes that break carbohydrates down into sugar in the gut, softening the rise of blood sugar after a meal. This is real, measurable biology, not folklore. Cinnamaldehyde does more still. In the laboratory, it acts as a powerful antimicrobial, capable of killing bacteria and fungi. The ancient use of cinnamon to preserve, to protect, even in embalming, quietly rested on a compound that genuinely fights decay. Once again, instinct had reached a real truth. But here the story takes a darker and crucial turn, a warning the ancients never knew. Because not all cinnamon is the same, and one kind carries a hidden danger. Most of the cinnamon sold cheaply in the world today is not true Ceylon cinnamon. It is a close relative called Cassia, which is harder, cheaper, and more common. It smells and tastes similar. But Cassia contains high levels of a natural compound called Coumarin. And Coumarin, in large amounts, can be toxic to the liver. This is the modern twist the old healers could never have measured. The everyday Cassia cinnamon in most kitchens is perfectly safe, sprinkled on food. But taken in large daily doses, as a supplement, its coumarin can push past safe limits and stress the liver. True Ceylon cinnamon, by contrast, contains only tiny, negligible amounts of coumarin. So the science delivers a beautifully balanced verdict. Were the ancients right that cinnamon is more than a flavor? Yes, it genuinely affects blood sugar, and it genuinely fights microbes. But their reverence came with a caution they could never have known, that the type matters, and that even a treasured spice must be respected, not overused. Think about everything this curl of bark has carried. The embalming rituals of Egypt, the funeral fires of Nero, 1,000-year lie about giant birds. The wars of empires for a single island. And within it, a real molecule that genuinely touches the human body, for better, and if misused, for worse. Cinnamon still grows on those same misty hillsides of Sri Lanka, where skilled hands still peel the delicate inner bark by hand and roll it into quills, exactly as their ancestors did for 2,000 years. The fortune is gone. The secret is out. But the tree, and its warm, sweet bark, remain. So the next time you catch that scent in a pastry, a cup of tea, a winter drink, pause for just a moment. That ordinary brown spice was once worth more than gold. It was burned at the funerals of emperors, hidden behind monstrous lies, and fought over by empires. It is bark from a tree on a distant island. And it was never, ever ordinary.